What happens when you are never chosen? Not first, not second, not even desired. What happens when love passes you by and you spend your life watching someone else receive everything you ever hoped for? What does it do to a woman's heart to wake up every day knowing you are seen but not loved? And what if your story didn't begin with love, but with rejection? Would you still believe that your life mattered? Would you still trust that God had a plan for you? 'Cause today, we are stepping into the life of a woman who was overlooked by man, but never, not even once, overlooked by God. Her name was Leah. Before Leah's story began, there was another story unfolding, a story of promises, of generations, of divine plans moving slowly through time. This was not just a family story. This was the story of a promise from God. God had made a covenant with Abraham, a promise that through his descendants, nations would rise, kings would come, and the world itself would be changed. That promise passed to his son, Isaac. Isaac was not just any man. He was the child of a miracle, born when his parents were far beyond the age of childbearing, a living proof that when God speaks, he fulfills. And yet, even in a family built on miracles, there would still be waiting. Isaac married Rebekah. She was strong, faithful, chosen with purpose. But for years, she could not have children. Day after day, month after month, year after year. Silence. No child. No fulfillment of the promise. And in that silence, questions began to grow. Did God forget? Was the promise delayed or denied? But Isaac did something powerful. He prayed. Not once, not casually, but persistently. He prayed until heaven responded. Finally, Rebekah conceived. But what should have been joy was filled with confusion. Something was wrong. There was movement inside her, but not normal movement. It was violent. It was intense. Felt like conflict. And she cried out, "If all is well, why is this happening to me?" And God answered her, "Two nations are in your womb. Two peoples will be separated from within you. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." Before they were born, their destinies were already written. The day of birth came. The first child emerged. Red-hairy, strong. They named him Esau. Then came the second, holding tightly to his brother's heel, as if even in birth, he refused to let go. They named him Jacob. Two brothers, two futures, one promise. But something began to happen. Something subtle, something dangerous. As they grew, their differences became clearer. Esau became a man of the field, strong, skilled, adventurous, a hunter. Jacob was different, quiet, observant, thoughtful. He stayed among the tents. But the real division did not come from their personalities, came from their parents. Isaac loved Esau. Rebekah loved Jacob. And without realizing it, they created a house divided. Favoritism quietly planted seeds that would later grow into conflict. One day, Esau came in from the field, exhausted, hungry, desperate. Jacob was cooking. Esau said, "Give me some of that food." And Jacob saw an opportunity. "Sell me your birthright." Now, think about that. The birthright was not just an inheritance. It was leadership, blessing, responsibility, destiny. And in a moment of weakness, driven by hunger, Esau said, "I am about to die. What is this birthright to me?" And just like that, he gave it away. Future. Traded for a temporary need. Years passed. Isaac grew old. His eyesight faded. And he knew his time was near. It was time to give the blessing. He called for Esau. "Go, prepare food for me, so I may bless you before I die." But Rebekah heard, and everything changed. She called Jacob. "Do exactly as I say." She prepared food, dressed him in Esau's clothes, covered his hands with animal skins, because Isaac could not see, but he could feel. Jacob stood before his father. "Who are you, my son?" "I am Esau." A lie. Isaac hesitated. Something felt wrong. But eventually, he blessed him. The blessing was given, and it could not be taken back. Then Esau returned, and in one of the most heartbreaking moments, he realized it was gone. His blessing, his future, his inheritance, all given to Jacob. And his cry echoed with pain, "Bless me too, my father." But it was too late. Esau's grief turned into anger. "I will kill him." And once again, Rebekah intervened. "Jacob, run. Not leave. Not travel. Run." Jacob left everything behind. His home, his family, his past. Alone, afraid, uncertain. And it was here, at his lowest point, that God met him. Jacob lay down, with a stone for a pillow, and he dreamed. A ladder, reaching from earth to heaven, angels moving up and down. And God spoke, "I am with you. I will keep you. I will bring you back. I will not leave you." Jacob woke up, and everything changed. But his journey was only beginning, because ahead of him was a house, family, a deception, and a woman who would change everything. Her name was Leah. Jacob's journey carried him farther than he had ever gone before, away from everything familiar, away from the consequences he had left behind, and into a land that would shape the rest of his life. The road was long, the days uncertain, but the promise of God echoed in his mind, steady and unshaken, guiding him forward even when he did not fully understand where he was going. Eventually, he arrived in the land of his mother's family, to the house of Laban. It was here, in this unfamiliar place, that destiny began to unfold in a way he never expected. One day, as Jacob stood near a well, he saw a group of shepherds gathered, their flocks resting nearby. The sun hung high, casting light across the land, and the well stood as a meeting place, a place of provision, a place of connection. As Jacob spoke with the shepherds asking about Laban, something happened that would change everything. In the distance, a figure approached. A young woman walking with quiet purpose, guiding her father's sheep. There was something about her, something that drew his attention instantly. Her presence carried a grace that seemed effortless, a beauty that was impossible to ignore. This was Rachel. In that moment, something awakened in Jacob's heart. The years of running, the weight of his past, the uncertainty of his future, all seemed to pause as he looked at her. Without hesitation, he stepped forward and rolled the stone away from the well, watering her flock. It was an act of strength, but also of intention, as though something within him already knew that this moment mattered. Then, overcome by emotion, Jacob wept. It was not just the relief of finding family, but something deeper, something connected to the journey he had taken and the place he had arrived. Rachel ran to tell her father, and soon Jacob was welcomed into Laban's house. Time passed, and Jacob began to work alongside Laban. He found purpose in the labor, but his heart was fixed on Rachel. He loved her deeply, completely, with a certainty that left no room for doubt. When Laban asked him what his wages should be, Jacob answered with clarity. He would work 7 years for Rachel, 7 years for the woman he loved, 7 years of labor, of waiting, of building a future he believed would finally bring him joy. And so he worked, day after day, season after season, through heat and cold, through long hours and quiet nights. But the Bible tells us something remarkable. Those 7 years felt like only a few days to him because of his love for her. Love has a way of changing time, of making the long feel short and the difficult feel worthwhile. Jacob endured it all because he believed that at the end of it, Rachel would be his. But in that same house, under the same roof, there was another woman. A woman who watched all of this unfold, quietly, without interruption, without recognition. Her name was Leah. Leah was Rachel's older sister. She lived in the same household, moved through the same spaces, heard the same conversations, and witnessed the same unfolding story. But her experience was not the same. The Bible describes her with a brief and often misunderstood phrase, saying that her eyes were weak. Whatever that meant in the context of her life, it set her apart. It made her different in a way that affected how she was seen, how she was valued, and how she was treated. While Rachel was described as beautiful in form and appearance, Leah lived in the shadow of that beauty. Imagine her life in those years. Watching her younger sister become the center of attention, seeing Jacob's eyes follow Rachel, hearing the laughter they shared, sensing the love that filled the space between them, and knowing deep within herself that she was not the one chosen, not the one desired, not the one waited for. What does it do to a person to live like that? To exist in the same space as love, but never receive it? To be seen but not truly noticed? To be present but not pursued? Leah's story does not begin with celebration. It begins in quiet observation, in silent endurance, in a life that moved forward without the affirmation her heart may have longed for. The years passed, and the time came for Jacob's service to be fulfilled. 7 years had ended. The moment he had waited for had arrived. He went to Laban and said, "Give me my wife, for my time is completed, that I may go in to her." There was anticipation in those words, expectation, a sense that everything he had worked for was finally within reach. Laban agreed, and preparations for the wedding began. A feast was held, a celebration filled with food, music, and community. It was a night of joy, of union, of promises fulfilled. But beneath that celebration, something else was taking place. Something hidden. Something that would change everything. As night fell and darkness covered the land, Laban carried out a plan that mirrored deception from another time. Just as Jacob had once stood before his father in disguise, now he would be placed in a situation where truth was hidden from him. Instead of Rachel, Laban brought Leah. Under the cover of night, in a time when faces were not clearly seen, Leah was given to Jacob as his wife. What was Leah feeling in that moment? Was she silent, led into something she could not control? Was she aware of the weight of what was happening? Did her heart wrestle with confusion, fear, or even a fragile hope that somehow this would change her life? The Bible does not tell us her thoughts, but it allows us to see the outcome. Morning came, and with it reality. Jacob looked and everything shifted. It was Leah. The shock was immediate, the realization undeniable. The woman he had worked 7 years for, the one he loved, the one he had envisioned building a life with, was not the one before him. In her place stood Leah, the woman who had always been there, yet never chosen. Jacob went to Laban, his voice filled with anger and confusion. "What is this you have done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served you? Why then have you deceived me?" The words carried the weight of betrayal, of expectation shattered, of trust broken. But Laban answered with calm justification, explaining that in their culture, the older daughter must be given in marriage before the younger. And just like that, Leah's life was sealed in a reality she had not written. She was now Jacob's wife. Not because she was chosen, but because she was given. Not because she was loved, but because she was part of a decision made by another. And yet, the story did not end there. Laban offered a solution that only deepened the complexity. Jacob could also marry Rachel, the one he truly loved, but he would have to serve another 7 years. And Jacob agreed. Such was the depth of his love for Rachel that he was willing to continue. Willing to endure more time, more labor, more waiting. So Jacob married Rachel as well. And from that moment on, Leah's life became something even more difficult. She was no longer just the sister in the background. She was now a wife, in a marriage where love was clearly divided. Rachel was loved, Leah was not. And every day, every interaction, every moment in that household would reflect that reality. This is where Leah's true story begins. Not in celebration but in comparison. Not in affection but in absence. Not in being chosen but in being placed. And yet, unknown to everyone around her, including herself, Leah was standing at the beginning of a journey that would transform her pain into purpose, her rejection into legacy, and her silent tears into something that would echo through generations. From the moment Leah became Jacob's wife, her life was no longer defined by what she hoped for, but by what she lacked. She lived in the same home as the man she was married to, yet she did not have his heart. She shared his name, his space, his daily life, but not his affection. Every glance, every word, every moment revealed a truth she could not escape. Jacob loved Rachel. And in that household, love was not hidden. It was visible. It was obvious. It was felt. Rachel was the one he desired, the one he had worked for, the one he had chosen. Leah, on the other hand, was simply there. A wife in title, but not in affection. A woman whose presence was real, but whose value seemed unseen. Imagine waking up each day in that reality. Imagine hearing laughter from another room, knowing it was not meant for you. Imagine seeing the way someone looks at another person, and knowing you will never receive that same look. Leah lived in that tension every single day. Not for a short time, not for a moment, but as a constant, unchanging part of her life. But there is a sentence in the story that changes everything. When the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, God saw her, not as others saw her, not through the lens of comparison or preference, but fully, completely, deeply. He saw her pain. He saw her longing. He saw the quiet tears that no one else noticed. And he responded. God opened her womb. In a culture where a woman's worth was often tied to her ability to bear children, this was not a small thing. This was not just a biological event. This was a divine intervention. While Rachel remained barren, Leah began to conceive. Her first son was born, and she named him Reuben. Because the Lord has seen my affliction, she said. Surely now my husband will love me. Do you hear the hope in her voice? This was not just the naming of a child. It was the expression of a longing heart. Leah believed that this would change everything. That now finally Jacob would see her. That now finally she would be loved. But nothing changed. Jacob remained the same. His love for Rachel did not diminish. His affection for Leah did not grow. And so Leah found herself holding her child, still carrying the same emptiness she had before. Then she conceived again. Another son was born. She named him Simeon. Because the Lord has heard that I am unloved. This time her words were different. There was less hope in her husband, and more recognition of God. She understood something now that she hadn't fully grasped before. God was not just seeing her, he was hearing her. But still her situation did not change. The house remained divided. The love remained unequal. The silence of Jacob's heart toward her remained unchanged. She conceived a third time. Another son. She named him Levi. Now this time my husband will become attached to me. There it was again. Hope rising, fragile but persistent. Leah was still trying. Still believing that somehow something would shift. That if she gave more, if she produced more, if she proved her worth, then maybe, just maybe, she would be enough. But again nothing changed. Jacob did not become attached to her. His heart did not turn. His love did not grow. Leah was still the woman who was present, but not chosen. 3 sons. 3 attempts. 3 hopes. All unmet. What does that do to a person? To try again and again, to give more and more, only to remain unseen in the way that matters most? Leah was learning something painful. Love cannot be earned through effort alone. And then something shifted. She conceived a 4th time. Another son was born. But this time when Leah named him, her words were different. She named him Judah. And she said, Now I will praise the Lord. No mention of her husband. No expectation of love. No attempt to earn affection. Just praise. Something had changed inside Leah. For the first time, she stopped striving for what she could not control. She stopped measuring her worth by Jacob's response. She stopped chasing love from a man who could not give it to her in the way she desired. Instead, she turned her focus to God. This was not a small shift. This was a transformation. Leah moved from seeking validation in people to finding peace in God. From longing to be chosen to understanding that she already was. From striving for love to resting in being seen. And in that moment, her story took a turn that no one could have predicted. Because Judah, the son born out of praise rather than pain, would become the beginning of something far greater than Leah could ever imagine. From Judah would come kings. From Judah would come a lineage. From Judah would come the very line through which the greatest story of redemption would unfold. But Leah did not know that yet. All she knew was that something inside her had changed. She was no longer living for Jacob's love. She was living in God's presence. But her journey was not over. Because even though she had found a new perspective, she was still in the same house. Still in the same marriage. Still surrounded by comparison, tension, and rivalry. And the story was about to become even more complicated. Because Rachel, the one who was loved, was still barren. And her silence would soon turn into desperation. And that desperation would ignite a competition that would affect every part of Leah's life. The house was about to become a place not just of divided love, but of rivalry, striving, and a battle for identity that would shape the next chapter of Leah's story. As the days turned into months and the months into years, the household of Jacob became a place filled with tension that could not be ignored. What had once been a quiet imbalance between two sisters was now growing into something deeper, something more visible, something that affected everyone within those walls. Rachel, the one who was loved, carried a different kind of pain. She had Jacob's affection. She had his attention. She had his heart. But she did not have children. And in that time, in that culture, barrenness was not just a personal struggle. It was a source of deep sorrow, a quiet shame, a question that lingered in the mind and pressed heavily on the heart. Why had God closed her womb? Why did the one who was loved remain without children? Meanwhile, Leah, the one who was not loved, was surrounded by sons. Every child she bore was a reminder, not only of God's hand upon her life, but also of the imbalance between her and her sister. And what had once been silent comparison soon became open rivalry. Rachel looked at Leah, and jealousy began to grow. Not small jealousy, not quiet frustration, but something intense, something consuming. She went to Jacob and cried out, "Give me children or I will die." Those words were not simply emotional. They revealed the depth of her pain, the desperation of her heart. Rachel had everything that Leah wanted, yet she lacked the one thing Leah had been given. And Jacob, frustrated and unable to change what only God could control, responded with sharpness, "Am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" The house was no longer just divided. It was strained. So Rachel made a decision born out of desperation. She gave her servant Bilhah to Jacob as a wife, saying that through her, she might have children. And so Bilhah bore a son. Rachel named him Dan, saying, "God has judged me and has also heard my voice." Then another son, Naphtali. "With great wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed." Do you see what this had become? Not just a family, but a competition, a striving, a constant comparison of who had more, who was favored, who was seen. And Leah, watching this unfold, felt something stir within her again. For a moment it seemed as though her place, the one area where she had found some sense of purpose, was now being challenged. And so she responded. She gave her own servant Zilpah to Jacob, and through her more sons were born, Gad and then Asher. "Fortunate," she said. Happy am I, for women will call me happy. But beneath those words was still a deeper reality. Leah was still in the same place. Still sharing a husband who did not love her as he loved another. Still living in a house where her worth seemed tied to what she could produce. Still navigating a life where peace was hard to find. And yet, in the middle of all this complexity, God was still working. Still moving. Still shaping something far greater than any of them could see. Then came a moment that on the surface seemed small but carried deep meaning. One day, Leah's son Reuben found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother. Mandrakes were believed to help with fertility. Rachel, hearing of this, asked Leah for some of them, and Leah responded with a voice that revealed years of quiet pain. Is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also? Those words were not about plants. They were about everything. About the life she had lived. About the love she had never received. About the position she had been forced into. Rachel, in response, made an agreement. Jacob would be with Leah that night in exchange for the mandrakes. And so, even intimacy had become something negotiated, something traded, something removed from its original meaning. That night, when Jacob came in from the field, Leah went out to meet him. I have hired you, she said, with my son's mandrakes. There is something deeply sobering in that moment. A wife, having to arrange time with her husband. A relationship reduced to transaction. And yet, even in that place, God met Leah again. She conceived once more. And bore another son, Issachar. God has given me my wages, she said. Then another, Zebulun. And finally a daughter, Dinah. Leah's life was full. Full of children. Full of activity. Full of visible signs of blessing. But her heart had traveled a long journey to get there. From longing, to striving, to disappointment, to surrender, to quiet strength. Meanwhile, Rachel's story also shifted. God remembered her. Her womb was opened, and she gave birth to a son, Joseph. Her joy was real. Her long season of waiting had ended. But even as her story found its answer, Leah's story was reaching something deeper. Not just a resolution of circumstance, but a transformation of identity. Leah was no longer the woman trying to earn love. She was no longer defining herself by Jacob's response. She had learned something that many never do. That worth is not given by people. It is given by God. And though her life had not unfolded the way she would have chosen, though she had walked through rejection, comparison, and pain, she had become something strong, something steady, something rooted. And her story was still not finished, because the true weight of Leah's life would not be fully understood in her lifetime. It would unfold through generations, through kings, through promises, through a lineage that would carry her name into a future she could not see. Leah, the woman who was not chosen by man, was about to be revealed as chosen by God in a way that would echo far beyond her days. And in that, her story would move from struggle to legacy, top of form. Time has a way of revealing what pain often hides. What once feels like loss. What once feels like rejection. What once feels like a life that did not turn out the way it should. And time begins to take shape. Leah's life had been filled with moments she did not choose. She did not choose the night she was given to Jacob. She did not choose to be the wife who was not loved. She did not choose to live in comparison with her sister. She did not choose the silence of a husband's affection. And yet, she chose how she responded. That is where her story changes. Not in what happened to her, but in what happened within her. As the years passed, something quiet but powerful took root inside Leah. She no longer named her children out of desperation. She no longer spoke from a place of trying to earn love. She had moved beyond that. There is a strength that comes when a person stops striving for what they cannot control. There is a peace that settles when the need to be chosen by others fades, and the realization comes, I am already seen by God. Leah reached that place. Not quickly, not easily, but deeply. And in that place, her life became something more than her circumstances. It became purpose. It became legacy. It became something eternal. Because the true meaning of Leah's life was not in her marriage. It was not in Jacob's love. It was not even in the rivalry with Rachel. It was in what God was building through her. One of her sons, Judah, the one she named when she finally said, "Now I will praise the Lord." That son would carry something no one in that moment could have understood. From Judah would come a line, a royal line, a line of kings. Generations later, from that same lineage would come David, a shepherd boy who would become king, a man after God's own heart. But the story would not stop there, because even David was only part of something bigger, far greater, far beyond anything Leah could have imagined as she held her child. From the line of Judah, from the life of a woman who felt unwanted, would come the one who would change everything, Jesus, the Savior, the fulfillment of the promise that began with Abraham, passed through Isaac, through Jacob, and through Leah. Think about that. The woman who was not chosen became part of the path that brought salvation to the world. The one who felt unseen was placed in the center of God's greatest story. This is the quiet reversal that only God can write, where the overlooked becomes essential, where the rejected becomes foundational, where the unnoticed becomes unforgettable. Leah's life was not loud. It was not glamorous. It was not celebrated in the way others might have been, but it was steady, faithful, enduring, and God used it. There is one more detail, one that is often missed. When Jacob's life came to an end, when the years had passed, when all the striving, the movement, the journey was complete, he gave instructions for where he wanted to be buried. Not beside Rachel, the one he loved most, but in the family tomb, beside Leah. In death, there was a restoration, a quiet honoring, a final acknowledgement. Leah, who had lived much of her life feeling second, was placed in a position of lasting significance. And that matters, because sometimes, recognition does not come when we expect it. Sometimes, it does not come in the way we hope. But that does not mean it will not come at all. Leah's story teaches us something deep, something uncomfortable, but powerful. That life will not always be fair. That love may not always be returned. That circumstances may not always align with our desires. But none of those things determine our value. None of those things cancel our purpose. None of those things limit what God can do through us. Leah did not have the love she longed for, but she had something greater. She had a place in God's plan. She had a legacy that would outlive her pain. She had a story that would speak to generations. And maybe that is what matters most, because at the end of it all, it is not about who chooses us. It is about the one who created us, the one who sees us, the one who writes a story that goes beyond what we can see. Leah's life is a reminder that even in rejection, there is purpose. Even in waiting, there is shaping. Even in pain, there is preparation. And even in being overlooked, there is a God who never looks away. So if you have ever felt unseen, if you have ever felt unwanted, if you have ever questioned your worth, remember Leah. Remember her journey. Remember her transformation. And remember this truth: the one who is not chosen by people may be the very one chosen by God to carry something far greater than they ever imagined. And that is a story worth telling. Top of form. Leah's story did not end in the pages of history. It did not stay confined to ancient tents, distant lands, and a family long gone, because the truth is Leah is still here, not in name, but in experience, in emotion, in the quiet lives of women who wake up every day carrying the same weight she once carried. Women who are present but not chosen, seen but not valued, surrounded by people yet deeply alone. Women who know what it feels like to be overlooked, compared, rejected, dismissed, or made to feel like they are not enough. Today, Leah is the woman who watches others receive the love she has prayed for, the one who sits in gatherings and smiles while hiding the ache of being unnoticed, the one who scrolls through images of beauty, success, relationships, and perfection and quietly asks herself, why not me? The woman who has been told directly or indirectly that she is not pretty enough, not slim enough, not light enough, not curvy enough, not educated enough, not successful enough, not enough in ways that slowly chip away at her confidence and her identity. Leah is the woman who has been body shamed, mocked for how she looks, criticized for things she cannot change, laughed at behind her back or sometimes even to her face. She is the one who has been rejected in relationships, passed over for someone else, left wondering what she lacked, what she did wrong, why she was not chosen. She is the one who has given her heart, her effort, her loyalty, only to receive indifference or silence in return. The one who has been bullied in school, at work, in families, or even in spaces where she expected acceptance. She is the one who has been called names, underestimated, ignored, and made to feel small. And just like Leah, many women carry these experiences quietly, without applause, without validation, without anyone fully understanding the depth of what they feel. Because pain like that is often hidden. It does not always shout, it whispers, it lingers, it shows up in self-doubt, in comparison, in the constant question of worth. It shows up in trying harder, doing more, giving more, hoping that maybe if they become better, prettier, stronger, more accomplished, then finally they will be seen. Finally they will be chosen, finally they will feel enough. But Leah's story speaks directly into that place, into that quiet struggle, into that unseen battle. And it says something that the world often does not say. It says that your value was never meant to come from people. It was never meant to be decided by someone's preference, someone's opinion, someone's inability to see you clearly. It was never meant to be built on comparison or competition or external validation. Leah spent years trying to earn love, trying to prove herself, trying to become enough in the eyes of someone who could not give her what she needed. And there are so many women today doing the same thing, chasing approval, chasing attention, chasing acceptance from people who are not capable of giving them the kind of love they are looking for. And in that chase, they lose themselves, they forget who they are, they measure their worth by reactions, by likes, by comments, by relationships, by how others treat them. But the turning point in Leah's life came when she stopped chasing Jacob's love and started resting in God's presence. When she named her son Judah and said, "Now I will praise the Lord," she was no longer saying, "Maybe now I will be loved." She was no longer saying, "Maybe now I will be accepted." She had reached a place where her identity was no longer tied to someone else's response. And that is where freedom begins. To the woman who feels rejected, you are not rejected by God. To the woman who feels despised, you are deeply valued. To the woman who feels forsaken, you are not abandoned. To the woman who has been bullied, mocked, or shamed, your worth has never been defined by the words of others. Those words may have hurt you, they may have stayed with you, but they do not have the authority to define you. You are not what they said about you, you are not what they called you, you are not the rejection you experienced, you are not the comparison that made you feel less than, you are not the relationship that did not choose you, you are not the standard that you did not meet, you are not the image that society tries to force you into, you are more than that, you are created with intention, with purpose, with value that does not fluctuate based on people's opinions. There will be moments when you feel like Leah, when you feel like you are in the background while someone else is chosen, when you feel like your efforts are unnoticed, when you feel like your love is not returned, when you feel like you are constantly being compared and found lacking. But those moments do not define your story, they are part of your journey, not the end of it. Leah did not start as the woman who praised. She became that woman through experience, through pain, through growth, through learning that her worth was not in being chosen by Jacob but in being seen by God. And that same transformation is possible for you. It may not happen overnight, it may take time. It may take unlearning what the world has told you. It may take healing from words and experiences that left scars, but you can get there. You can reach a place where you are no longer chasing validation, where you are no longer shrinking yourself to fit into expectations, where you are no longer measuring your worth by comparison, where you are no longer defined by rejection, where you stand in confidence not because everything around you has changed but because something within you has changed. Your story is not over, your value is not diminished by what you have been through. Your purpose is not canceled by rejection. Your future is not limited by how people have treated you. Just like Leah, there is more to your story than what you can currently see. There is something being built, something being shaped, something that may not be visible now but will become clear in time. And one day, you may look back and realize that the moments that made you feel the smallest were actually preparing you for something greater. That the rejection that broke your heart was not the end of your story. That the silence you experienced was not because you were forgotten, but because something deeper was being formed within you. So hold on, even when it is hard, even when it feels like nothing is changing, even when you feel unseen, because you are not invisible, you are not forgotten, you are not overlooked by God. He sees you fully, He knows your heart, He understands your pain, and He is working in ways you may not yet understand. And just like Leah, the woman who was not chosen by man became part of a story that changed the world. Your life, your journey, your story carries more weight, more purpose, and more potential than you may realize right now. And that truth remains whether people see it or not, whether they acknowledge it or not, whether they choose you or not, because at the end of the day, the most important thing is not who chooses you, but that you are already chosen by God.